name's Nic Perkins, and I went to Francis Howell High School.
Well, hey, Nick, want to thank you for coming on the show and joining with us, and appreciate you being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's start back when, young boy, middle school age. When did you start playing baseball?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you the exact age. I would say somewhere around 3 to 4 years old. And I started playing T-ball up with my older brother, and that was where it all started.
Now, we know that your dad's a high school baseball coach. Did he coach you when you were in T-ball and all that coming up?
He didn't coach me in T-ball, but as soon as I got out of T-ball, he was my head coach. My head coach from about 6 years old all the way throughout high school.
So let me ask you something. How important do you think it is to have people throughout your life that are influenced, that influence you and that have helped you as a person as you've gone up through high school and into your life today?
I'd say it plays a huge role, just because, I mean, there are some days where, like, you sit there and you tell yourself that, oh, you're not good enough, or oh, you can't do this, or you can't do that, but those people always sit there and show you that you can do it and you're capable of every task.
Are there people in your life that were influencing you as you grew up through middle school, elementary, middle, high school, and who were they?
We'll start at elementary school, and by far Mr. Wolf was my teacher, and he was unbelievable. Every single day, or every single year, you get asked, what's your dream job? Every single time I'd answer, play professional baseball. And every teacher would laugh. They'd be like, hey, good luck, go get it. But when I told Mr. Wolf that, he genuinely was like, good for you, go do it. And actually said, the first time I told him I wanted to be a professional baseball player, he said, when you do it, I would like tickets to the Chicago White Sox game, because he's a diehard Chicago White Sox fan. And from there on out, I was always like, someone believes in me, someone's in my corner, I can do this now.
I'm Tony Wolf. I've been teaching a little over 30 years, mostly fifth grade. Started in Fredericktown, Missouri back in 1988. And then for the last 20-some years, I've been in Francis Howell teaching at Cosley Elementary. I taught fifth grade there for 20 years, and here just most recently, been for the last few years, I've been subbing as a part-time assistant principal there at Cosley Elementary.
High school, I had a teacher, Miss Friedline, and the first thing I ever noticed when I walked into her classroom was her podium that sits there. And on her podium it reads, "Attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching?" And I literally sat there and thought about that the whole class period while she was talking about whatever she was talking about. I don't remember, because I was thinking the whole time about my attitude every day and how other people see that and can feed off that. And ever since I've seen that board, it's something I live by, and that plays a huge role in my life. And now I would pick her for like the teacher. You pick a teacher to represent you at games, and you'd walk them out and whatnot. And I would always pick Miss Friedline just because she cared. She came to all my games, basketball, baseball,
Really?
and football. Would show up all the time just to watch me play. Some of the times I wish she wasn't there, but she would always be there and would push me on to the athletic side, but also in school she made sure that I was the best student I could be, and just helped me become an all-around better human being.
I had Nick for the first time his sophomore year. I had known who he was. His parents are good friends of my husband and I's, have been for years. They actually came to our wedding 20 years ago, and I knew they had these 4 little boys, but they weren't so little, these 4 big boys that were young. And I never had his older sibling, Zach, but I had hoped that I would get the opportunity to meet Nick, and here he comes. Sophomore year, just guns a-blazing, comes in here, ready to go. And we have, we gelled right off, just right from the beginning, and we've been close ever since.
Well, The quote was one of the biggest things. Like, that was the first thing that kind of hooked me in.
What
And
quote?
This quote.
Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? Because, like, from the start, like, if I was ever do something that was I probably shouldn't be doing, she'd be like, "Is your attitude worth contagion or worth catching?" Yeah, words are hard. And then, like, from there on out, like, she just always kept me in check and made sure I was always on top of my business, doing the right things.
And then there was also Coach Storm in high school, who was my basketball coach. And he pushed me greater than most coaches I've had, just because he knew baseball was my sport, but he knew basketball was his sport that he coached me in. So he was trying to get the best out of me for basketball while I was still kind of wanting the baseball side. And he handled that very well, looking back on it, especially for the way I acted sometimes. He shouldn't have gave me the time of day. But he always pushed me to be the best person I could be with both basketball, football, life, baseball, just everything all in one, and he was helping me a lot.
It would have been in 7th grade is the first time that I met Nick. He came to our basketball camp. Big brute of a kid, big strong kid, so he's very attractive to somebody as a coach, like, this kid has some potential. And he kind of dominated the games and things such as that. As a 7th grader, incredibly competitive already, didn't like losing games, losing competitions. Really liked what I saw in him at that very time. And then at the same time, he had open eyes and open ears. He was willing to listen just as well. Even though he was very successful as an athlete at that age, he still wanted to learn.
Yeah, seeing that in a young kid.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes from he came from a home where education was important. I think he came from a place where he'd been playing ball, not just starting in 7th grade when he came to camp, but very early on, and learned the value of drills and learned the value of taking coaching and things such as that. And whether it's in the classroom or on a ball field, it's education one way or the other. And he was just really solid that way, even as a 7th grader, wanting to learn, but also just that competitive nature just really sticks out with me.
So, your parents were both athletes, correct?
Yes.
And collegiate athletes?
Yes.
So how much did they influence you as far as moving forward as an athlete?
That was always a goal from the start, was to be a collegiate athlete. And the fact that both parents were, that just kind of pushed you to be better than they were.
I think the first time, well, of course, we always played ball in the living room and in the backyard and that kind of thing. It was always fun. The thing happened, though, he's about 8, 7. I don't know, he was always a bigger kid. Yeah. And so we ended up playing him up. We played him up 1 year, and then we played him up 2 years. But for a long time, we had to carry around a birth certificate in his bag just because he was so big people didn't belong. And then he'd bump down and play his own age, and all them people would get upset with us because he shouldn't be there. I'm like, well, that's his age, but we challenged him when he was young. And the first year we moved him up, it was kind of, let's see how it goes. If he hits, if he belongs, he'll stay.
So we know you played t-ball and all that coming up. When did you start playing other sports? How old were you?
I started football 6th grade, played basketball probably from the age of 5, and also ran around soccer from about 5 years old till middle school, and then shut that down.
But soccer's good cardiovascular.
Hey, it kept me in shape. That's all that matters.
There you go. So you believe in playing multiple sports coming up through high school and all that?
Oh, yeah. I think multiple sports plays a big role, and I think that's awesome for kids to show their other talents, not just one sport, and focus on one thing. It really keeps an open mind with it.
Athleticism, yeah?
Oh, huge time.
Yeah. So when did you see yourself being that person that said, baseball's my sport?
I'd say somewhere around middle school I knew baseball was going to be my sport, but I figured I would still continue to play football and basketball.
Coming out of middle school into high school, you're playing a lot of sports. You're playing baseball, you're playing football, right? You're playing basketball. Was there a lot of other activities that you had to give up in order to maintain that level of playing sports?
There was always a lot of stuff you had to give up playing sports in high school. Like for football, you play your game on Friday nights. Well, one, all your friends are going out on Friday nights and hanging out, having parties, whatever they're doing. But we get to wake up Saturday morning at 7 a.m. to watch film. So our game finishes, one, we're exhausted, and two, we need to go to bed because we got to wake up in the morning and get to the school to watch film. And then for baseball, my dad's notorious for this. He decides to plan doubleheader the day after prom or homecoming, whichever season that one's in. So everyone goes to the dance, and there's always a party after, and you can't really go because you have 2 games the next day. I mean, you can if you want, but then you're just not going to perform well, and he knows. He knows everything. But it's like you miss out on a lot of the parties like that, and then like on just normal nights when your friends go to hang out at a house or you say they're going over to do homework, well, you got practice every day, and then you get home from practice, you're tired, you got to eat dinner. Then by that time, you have to get your own homework done before you're going to bed. So, I mean, there's a lot of sacrifices being made for every type of athlete out there.
Student athlete, that's what it's about, right?
Exactly.
It is.
The student is before the athlete. You got to get the schoolwork done.
Do you feel like it was a sacrifice? Do you feel like it was a sacrifice, something that you missed out on?
I don't think it was anything I missed out on. I mean, yeah, it would have been fun to be at some events, but like I'd much rather be where I am now than sacrificing what I was doing for that to then not be in my shoes.
Did you ever think that, or maybe see that may not be something you wanted to do?
No. It was always sports for me. There was no other route, really. Day and night, it was practice for this, practice for that. I mean, I'd never had off days. There was a practice for some sport at all times.
So did Mom drive you everywhere, or was it Dad, or?
So a lot of times the twins were together and me and Zach were together, so they would split and just take turns going back and forth. But once we got older into high school, it was a whole different animal because Zach was on his own, I was on my own, and the twins were on their own. And then sometimes me and Zach would be together, which would help. But still, you had traveling, playing ball out of town. Like there were weekends where my parents couldn't make it and we would go stay with somebody. And then the next weekend, his parents couldn't make it, and they'd stay with each other. Like my junior summer, I lived with basically a whole different family or sophomore summer, with a whole nother family the whole summer, just because my dad was running around with the twins because he was their coach, and my mom had to travel with my older brother. And every once in a while, she would alternate, and my older brother would go stay with his buddy while she would take me and my buddy.
That's crazy.
It was a cycle. It was a long cycle.
Now, as your parents were, evidently or there were athletes, how much of that do you think, genetics, do you think those things play into that?
They have to, I would think. I'm not a scientist or anything, but I feel like that would play a pretty big role.
Yeah, you'd think, huh? Right? So as you were starting through middle school, getting into high school and whatnot, where did you feel like that it was that transition from where your parents were the major focus of your athletic career, for lack of a better word, to where it was transitioning into high school? When did you really see that happening?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably say freshman year was when I really saw like a big difference. Started maturing a little bit more and noticing the difference in sports and everything, and you could really see a future.
Yeah. Did you feel like your parents weren't as much involved, or were they as involved, or where did that dynamic transfer?
Always involved at all times, all the way through. Still are. They never quit with that.
Now, how much did they help you in recruiting and all those things as you went on into high school and whatnot?
A ton, just because, well, one, they would drive me everywhere to get seen by the scouts or to do a showcase or whatever it was. And then they also dealt with all the mail that was coming in and seeing the schools and sorting that out and everything like that. But I mean, without them, it would have been very hard.
Yeah, I understand. It's a difficult process, isn't it?
It is. It's a long process.
So as your parents were dealing with that, because you had your older brother was also, being recruited as well, correct? So that was a lot of back and forth in that time frame, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was, just because at all times there was college coaches watching all of us pretty much. And like they had to kind of, I mean, you can't sit there and go talk to the scout, but you kind of have to sit back, but at the same time you're like, what? I wonder what they're thinking. So it was, I mean, they were always involved with all of it.
Did that process, do you believe that process really helped them going through it with Zach, then, coming behind and helping with you?
I think from the start of it with Zach to the finish of it with the twins, I think they made a huge difference. And like just learning the ways that other parents would do it and see how other people did it and learn from their mistakes. And they did a very good job about that.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's a difficult process, isn't it?
Oh, it is, especially after you got to go take visits. You got to deal with all the paperwork, meet the staff, check out the facilities, all of that included. And they did it with every single one of us at every visit and all that.
That's awesome. Okay. How did you enjoy the recruiting process?
Yes and no. I mean, you love seeing like all of the letters and talking to all the coaches and all of that, but at the same time, like when you go out and perform, you're kind of like, oh, what if he thinks this of me? Or I got to do this because these guys are talking to me, rather than just be yourself and go out there, which is always that animal you're kind of fighting in your head just to overcome that and be the best that you can be.
Now, I know this is the difficult question because a recruiter comes to town or you show up at a tournament and this is the guy you really want to impress and you go 0 for 4 and you make 3 errors. How'd that make you feel?
Terrible. But you can't show it. The thing nowadays is those scouts, they want to see that game. They want to see how you react after you have the worst game of your life. Or do you have your head down or are you happy all the time and still go lucky? Which is one of the hardest things to do, especially when it comes to baseball because it's the sport of failure. And that was very hard to walk out of the stadium with your head up after you just either team got spanked and lost by 10 runs or you yourself didn't perform while everyone else on your team did perform. It was hard, but I mean, you just had to keep your head up and always move on, and the sun's going to come up the next day and you're going to go back out and do the same thing.
Was there one particular time that happened to you that, how that helped you in that process?
I couldn't remember a particular game. I know it happened a lot, though, just because there was a lot of times where I'd walk off the field and I'd be like, what were you doing? Why did you do that? Why did you swing at that pitch? Why did you throw that ball? Why did you say what you said? Why did you throw your bat or do whatever that you did that that they saw?
Right.
Because the second they see that, like that could either be an X and they'll never see you again, and you're off the list forever.
That's tough, isn't it?
Oh, it's not easy. It is very hard, but as soon as you understand that concept and you can keep your head high and always stay on a straight line, then you're in good shape.
Now, within this process, you have teammates and other guys that are looking and being recruited and all that. How did you guys help each other with those things?
Oh, we would all talk. I mean, my summer ball team was very good. We had probably 7 or 8 SEC guys on our team. There's, a handful of us that are in the minor leagues right now. And we would all talk about, like, oh, got a letter from here, keeping in touch, like, because a lot of us wanted to go to the same school and play together in college. And we would talk about, oh, I went on the visit. What did you see in the visit? What did you like? What did you see differently? And then, like, there's the one guy that made a longer trip than us just so he could check out that campus. Well, he's going to tell us everything that he liked and didn't like about that campus.
Right.
So, we all kept each other in the loop about every single school there basically was that was all over us.
After he got moving up, I'd let him go with his older brother. I let him go, and then I let Nick go, and then I bopped down, So, I coached 13s for like 4 years in a row just because he was playing up and the twins were playing up and that kind of a thing. So I probably coached the twins more at the youth than I did these guys because of the high school rules, which I really don't like. But you know, you get contact days and that kind of a thing, and you know, if I'm in, I want to be there every day and that kind of a thing. So it was a good experience. I think it made him better, you know. And as he matured, you know, he knew what to do, and things were great. You know, when we got to high school, it was a good thing for Francis Howell.
I remember when he had a very successful career in high school athletics, multiple sport athlete. And I saw that in newspapers and whatnot. But because of bringing up my own son, who was 4 or 5 years younger than him, I really didn't have the opportunity to go see him play. But I would, you know, follow him as well as all my students as much as possible. When I knew they were doing great things, I'd, you know, keep an eye on the newspapers and the STL Today or whatever, you know, just checking out the footage on TV, the Friday Night Lights and that type of thing.
So I think it's really easy for big athletes to get labeled as being, you know, conceited and cocky and a jerk and, you know, maybe just all about being an athlete. But he defeated that rule or that, you know, image completely because he was so kind, not just to me, but to his classmates. I remember there was a young man, a classmate of his that sat next to him that had muscular dystrophy. He was in a wheelchair, lots of accommodations, and Nic treated him like his brother. I know they ate lunch together. He helped him, especially with computer work because he struggled sometimes. But don't get me wrong, Nic wasn't just all, oh, what do you need, what do you need? He was a smart aleck to him, but Tori loved it, loved Nic. Like, it was just so cool to watch that relationship, and he made that kid's world. And since then, he has passed away, and I know that the impact that Nic had on him was tremendous, and I just love that.
And we had a field trip planned where we went down to St. Louis City to Centenary Methodist Church, and we wanted to kind of see some folks that didn't have it quite as fortunate as we had. And early on in that process, Nic was apprehensive. He was nervous about some things, about probably being in an environment that he was unfamiliar, and he didn't really want to go. And I said, Nic, this is something you're going to do. It's a team activity. It's for us beyond basketball. And he got on the bus with us, and he went, and because it was my idea, not Nic's. And when we came back, you could just see a change in him. He was so glad that he had done it. He was so glad that he had the opportunity to see his fortune, that not everyone is handed the same cards as he has been given. And I was just really happy to see that growth with him, and it made me really proud that he went ahead and went through with that.
He wasn't really a varsity guy as a freshman, you know, but him and his brother both, there was a 7-year stretch right there. We were really good, you know, so it just wasn't, you know, our sons, but we had a lot of role players, and not role players, I'd say, I mean great players, you know. It's like a lot of those classes that were older than Nic were, you know, I would have 10 guys, you know, commit to go play baseball in one class, which is outstanding. And that happened a couple times, you know. In 2011, we're state champs. 2013, we're state champs. 2014, that was your senior year, right? You got second. So he went to 3 Final Fours as a high school kid. He got 2 rings out of the deal. So that's, you know, pretty special, but it's a tribute to all the other guys that are on the team. I mean, yeah, he was in the middle of the order, and you know, he's the only guy that's ever hit a ball out of the center field here. And that was in BP off of me one time, but you know, it happens. But you know, you know, as Zach, the older brother, and Nic, you know, as freshmen, and even the twins didn't really start as freshmen because we were so good. I mean, if you bring kids up early, there's got to be a need for it, and they got to be good enough, and they got to be mature enough, and there's a lot of things that got to come in place for that to happen. You know, but they all started as sophomores. You know, they're all 3 years, so they got bit pieces as freshmen. You know, I mean, get them in, give them a pinch hit, and you know, the twins would courtesy run. You know, but he'd always just get the bat and swing it.
You are one of how many siblings?
I have 3 brothers, so there's 4 of us that live in the house, 4 boys.
And I feel sorry for your mother.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
She's got a tough life.
Yes, I understand. So, where are you at in the pecking order then?
So I have an older brother, 1 year older than me. Then there's me, and then there's a year off, and then twin brothers.
Twin brothers.
Yes.
That's Ryan and Justin, correct?
Ryan and Justin are twins, and Zach's the older one.
Okay. So, how was that growing up, that dynamic, right, being in the middle there? How'd that shape you a little bit with that competitive edge?
I mean, it was always interesting because there was 4 of us, so you could always play the 2-on-2 games. But the twins would get mad when the 2 older ones were together. So I was always Justin's partner because he was older by 11 minutes. And then Zach, the older brother, was always with Ryan, the younger twin. And that was always the team no matter what we were doing. Even if those 2 were way better than me and Justin at one sport, we were always the teams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had a lot of games we played that was always very competitive that would end in fights multiple times. But it was fun, to say the least.
So who was the mediator? Was it mom or was it dad?
Definitely mom. I don't know. That's kind of split because in the summer times my dad's a teacher, so he's at home and he has to deal with us all day. He didn't like that. But as soon as my mom came home, we were straight to the mom. So that was, I mean, they had a pretty mixed share, but it was pretty even, I guess.
Yeah. So, having an older brother, did that push you as an athlete to, to aspire to be that at that level? Did he push you in any way that way?
Without a doubt, because I played with him and I played up with him in baseball and basketball. Didn't play up with him in football, but he was a stud football player, and like watching him play made me want to be that much better. But he pushed me on the baseball and basketball court just because we're teammates the whole time, and he's always yelling at me, telling me I suck and to get better.
Hey, that's what brothers are for,
exactly.
Right?
If it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have got better.
Hey, and I think there is something to be said. It's usually there's a lot of times that you see those younger siblings really pushing hard to live up to a older brother that is a very good athlete or a student or anything of that nature, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the younger one's always trying to be better.
Yeah.
They're not trying to fill those shoes. They're trying to outdo them. So that's something that we all had to do.
And did that ever create friction with you and your brothers at times?
I would never say it created. I mean, if it created friction, it was for about 10 seconds while we fought, and then it was over and we were good. That was one thing we were very good about. If we got mad at each other, we would get in a fight, and the fight would conclude it, and we were good right after that. So, I mean, there were times where we get in arguments and disagree and that, but it was never like a long-term issues.
He's been willing to give first. He's not just a taker. What can you do for me? And I think that's really important because it's not give and take with your athletes and those people that you get a chance to mentor, but it's give and receive, not so much take. And I think Nic has shown me some things with things that he has given back to his school. He's back here doing some substitute teaching in the off season. He's done some things with basketball camps and tutoring athletes. And kids go through a growth, and that wasn't always Nic. A lot of kids get that way. But Nic grew into a very giving and caring person. And I'm really proud that he has reached that place in his life, and I'm really proud of him that he's there.
It made me feel really good as an educator when Nic contacted me a couple of years ago. I was doing my part-time assistant principal job at Cosley, and he was in town for a short period of time. And he contacted me and he was like, "Hey, I'd really like to come up and see you and say hello." And I was like, "Absolutely." So he came up and we had a good conversation, and just the kind of person he is. We've got kids kindergarten through 5th. Some of those kids could really benefit from seeing a big-time ball player like him, a role model. And I asked him if he'd be willing for me to take him around the building and see his old alma mater, if you will, and introduce him to some kids. And he was more than willing and happy to accommodate me in that request. And you know, he got to interact with some of the kids who really needed to have that interaction that day. And I'm sure it did a ton of good for them, as well as for Nick. I'm sure it was rewarding for him as well. But that's just the kind of kid he is. He's the kind of guy that's going to continue to give back.
I watched Nick when he was in college. He went to Ole Miss, and my 13-year-old is obsessed with Ole Miss, everything Ole Miss, like to the extreme. And then Nick going there just amplified that times 1,000. And Nick knew, and I remember the day that he accepted his friend, or he requested him to be a friend on Instagram, and that was like the best day ever. And then he sent me clothes, like Ole Miss clothes for Trey. He invited us to games, and we did go, and we watched him in Columbia when they played Mizzou, and it was just the greatest day for him. And he invited him down on the field afterwards, introduced him to all of his players, you know, on the team. I know he took a ball and had the whole team sign a ball for Trey, and it was just so cool. He didn't know this kid, and he didn't have to do that, but to do that on his own and to go over and beyond, it meant the world to me, it meant the world to my son, and it just showed the character of this young man, which is just awesome. So I really just think he's a great person. Mm-hmm.
You're recruited to Ole Miss. What do you take away from playing at a Division I college?
That was, at that point, like, I couldn't top it. Walking in, I mean, you're playing in front of the best fans in college baseball, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. I mean, if you hit a home run, like, the students throw their beers in the air. Like, that's really cool. That's like something no one does. Like, I mean, it was playing in that stadium. I mean, you're on a big league surface.
Yeah.
You have a big league locker room and facilities and workout room, and just everything about it was like, you're like, wow, this is awesome. It can't get any better than this. And I'm really glad that I went there.
Awesome. Great experience. So, school-wise, tough?
School-wise, I would have to say was not easy. But we had tutors through the athletics, and I would say without that, I would have been very bad at school.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried. I was just wasn't there. My older brother was a genius. School was easy for him. Me, it was very hard. But those tutors and the connections that the athletics would give us to help us learn was unbelievable.
You know, there's a lot of kids. I don't care. There's a lot of kids out there that struggle in school. There's the whole gamut, but they want to play collegiate sports. What advice would you give those kids that are struggling, you know, with their schoolwork and maybe feeling like, man, it just ain't worth it. I want to play college sports, but this is killing me.
The biggest thing I could tell him, and I'm a substitute teacher, so I deal with this a lot because I see the high schoolers. I'm like, come on, guys, don't throw this opportunity away. But the biggest thing for me, like I tell kids all the time, is show you're invested. In class, you have to pay attention. And the second you have trouble, go talk to the teacher. You can't be scared. Because if you show the teacher that you're invested and that you care about your grade, they're going to put in effort to help you get a better grade. And by doing that, you will see a big difference.
So when you're at the collegiate level, I mean, you're in these classes, though, that are 200 students, 300 students. I don't know, crazy big. This is a big school, right?
Yeah, you would have classes that would be easily over 200 people in an auditorium where the teacher's talking into a microphone and doesn't maybe know 2 people in the classroom. That's it.
So how do you overcome that?
Well, I'm laughing because my teammates and roommates would always give me smack just because of what I would do. I would always go talk to the teachers all the time. Mm-hmm. And if I ever had any problem at all, I'm sending them an email and I'm going to their office.
There you go.
So they see my face, they know who I am, and they're going to tell me. I mean, some teachers might even give you answers. You never know. Like at least they're going to know who I am now. Now I'm not just some random person in the crowd. They know who I am. And after the first class period of every semester, I would go up and introduce myself, and I would just let them know who I was. That way, hey, I'm not the kid that just showed up and left and you have no idea who he is. He's just a name on a roster. And everyone would make fun of me for that. But I always did it because I wanted the teachers to know who I was.
But did you feel like it made a difference?
I feel like it made a huge difference. Because then whenever I would send the teacher an email right before a test saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, they would reply to me, but maybe not my roommate that hadn't went and talked to the teacher yet. So, introducing yourself and then showing that you care and are going to be attentive in class made a huge difference for me. And
so to tell all those naysayers sometimes, don't laugh.
Yeah.
Right?
Everyone's going to laugh at you, but
so what?
It's worth a better grade if you ask me.
So moving on, you're drafted. What kind of experience was that?
Draft day was working into the draft. Unbelievable experience. You're playing every day. There's professional scouts there. They're all over. They're asking you questions. They're having you fill out questionnaires. Great time, And then draft day comes. Most miserable day of all time. Just because.
Why is it miserable?
You're sitting there waiting for your name to get called, and it just doesn't come. And then finally it comes, and it's awesome. But I tell you what, the 15 minutes seems like 4 days.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just because you keep seeing all these names raffled off, and you're like, what is going on? But the second you hear your name, best day ever.
Yeah.
And it's an unbelievable experience. I was in North Carolina playing summer ball, and the little brother, Ryan, the littlest one, was playing in the same league.
He probably doesn't like to hear that, does he?
He's going to be like, I'm bigger than you. But he was playing in the same league, and he had an off day on draft day. Mm-hmm. I knew I was going to go on the third day. I knew I wasn't going to be in the top 10 rounds. And so he came up and drove over 3 hours, 4 hours, however far it was, I don't know. And a couple guys on my team, we all kind of knew that it was going to come at some point. And I got a phone call, and after the phone call, I'm like, oh, it's about to happen. And then 10 more rounds went by, and then finally got called. And when it got called, I was in the car driving back to my house to get my jersey to go to the field because we had a game that night. And I wasn't sure that it was going to happen. And then we're in the car, and my brother starts smirking and looks at me and goes, dude, you just got drafted. And I was like, why are you telling me this? Like, don't play a joke. Like, that's not funny. And he shows me Twitter. I found out through Twitter. He shows me the Twitter feed and goes, here, look. And there it was. And that was a moment I will never forget.
That day, I was on my way to Jeff City for the Missouri High School All-State meeting. Mm-hmm. And I was traveling with Eric Goff, who's the head coach of Zuma West. He played for me too. We're friends. And I'm watching it on Draft Tracker on my phone, and I get out. We get to Jeff City, get out of the car, and all of a sudden, boom! He calls me, and I just turned off Draft Tracker. And he called me and said, "Hey, Dad, I just got drafted." So I cried. That's what happens. So I get into the meeting, and so I'm trying to. I'm texting everybody, telling them, it happened. He's going to go. Nationals took him. Blah blah blah. And we're talking about kids in the All-State meeting, and they say, Perkins, what about this guy? And I go, hold on a second, I'm pretty busy right now. I'll get back to you in a second. So it was a very, very exciting day for us as a family and all of our friends and all our baseball people and that kind of stuff. And we are so very proud of him.
Yeah, absolutely. So who drafted you?
The Washington Nationals.
And you're still in their organization?
Yes, I am. I got drafted in 2017. And went to short season there, and then went back and just completed my first full season.
So how's that working? How do you feel about all that right now?
It's an unbelievable experience. I mean, I showed up in spring training, and everyone's like, dude, just wait till you get to spring training. Like, it's a whole different thing, which, I mean, they're right. There's 400 guys running. There's one guy talking, and the second it breaks, everyone's going to this dugout doing this drill with this coach. And I mean, it's chaos, but it's just organized to a T. And, like, you're running around lost, like, just following people that you think you're supposed to be with. But, I mean, it's awesome just because you have every single guy there is chasing the same exact goal. And every guy there is going to push you to be better. Even if you're the backup of the guy in front of you, the guy in front of you is still going to say, hey, try this. Like, I mean, every single guy there is just an overall awesome guy that wants to see the best out of every single person there.
Now, you'll be going back second season.
Mm-hmm.
And
second full season.
Second full season of professional baseball. What's your goals? Where do you feel? What do you want to achieve in this year, in that year coming up?
Based off last year, my biggest goal is to stay healthy. Last year I caught a fastball to the wrist, was on the DL for a month or so. And this year I think to make it through a full season and not have any injury, I think that would be a big step, and then just perform every day the best I possibly can.
So Nic, I wanted to thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time, and really enjoyed talking to you. Really did. Good luck to you. I wish you all the best, and I hope you make it. I really do. I hope you make it. I think you're a tremendous young man.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. There you go. Nailed it.
Nailed it.